And that's great because I think you realise, don't you, when you when I first launched Paul's Live, which is the UK's largest women's health event, I launched it 3 years ago, and we were already doing a conference which was called Menopause in Aesthetics, which was for doctors and nurses, to private doctors and nurses to help treat patients, which I thought they were really well geared up for that. So I decided to do the consumer event. And the more that I researched and the more that I learned, the gaps in gender healthcare globally are shocking. And, and it's quite scary, actually, that we've been allowed to have those sort of gaps. And I think my generation, I am my target audience, and they're refusing to get older. And they are thinking, it's really interesting that you should say about your daughters. I'm actually a grandparent now. I've got 2 daughters and a granddaughter.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you do actually think as well how difficult it is for them already, especially in the UK, especially with endometriosis. I'll give you an example. In the UK, it's 10 years, the waiting list for a diagnosis. Now, we've actually got at Paul's Live, we've got an endo workshop with some of the best specialists there. And I know that there's a machine that can test you, and the NHS could quite easily have that in the hospitals, which will tell you straight away if you've got stage 4 endo, which would help so many women, so many women. And then I think anything like that that can lead to other future problems, like fertility problems and things. And it's just like, when you look at it, that's what. So it started off as I want to help other perimenopausal women. I don't want them to go through what I went through. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, hold on, from the moment menstruation starts right through to postmenopause, the hormones, the hormone balancing, it's like a juggling act, and not everybody suffers with menopause symptoms. And I
Correct.
always take my hat off to those ladies that don't. And I think sometimes they feel a bit guilty, like when I'm out and about, and I meet people, they're just like, "Well, I don't have any." And I said, "That's great. Like, don't worry, it's fine. We love that. We love that. We celebrate that as well." So I think that's
But John,
important,
if I
isn't
can
it?
jump in there for a second, but they do still struggle because their body has been ripped, as we well know, of estrogen. So even if they're
Yeah.
not seeing the nasty symptoms at this
Mm.
stage, they still, their bone density is decreasing,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
vaginal walls have still reduced in
Yeah.
size, sex could have become painful,
Yeah.
they have more risk of more things as they're getting
Yeah.
older because of the estrogen. So yes, they might
Mm.
not be having those symptoms, the hot flashes and the
Mm.
itchy
Mm.
ears
Mm.
and the loss of hearing and everything else at this moment,
Mm.
but by the time they get to 65 or 70, they
Yeah, it
just
might be another. Yeah,
don't know
might you
what's
don't
ahead of
know,
them.
do you? And
No,
I think the thing is, I think people are, especially in the UK, what we're trying to do is take responsibility for our own health now, which is, I think, is really important. I think, you can't rely on the GP here. I went 5 times. I was told to take antidepressants. That, and we hear that so often, and it's very hard because, I mean, I was in denial as well. I didn't really know that that was coming, and I think, it hits you like a sledgehammer. Particularly me, it did, and I have had every symptom possible. But I do believe him upstairs has blessed me with everyone, so that I can biohack them. I can find a solution to them, and then I can tell other women what those solutions are, and they may work for them. And if that's the case, that's great. And I think, um, you know, uh, when you're talking about symptoms there, they can really vary, can't they? But they can be really debilitating as well. And I think,
correct.
um, you know, it's very difficult when you're in this sandwich effect that we are now. I think women are having children later, aren't they? And then they've got elderly parents and things, and they're still working and got careers, and then the perimenopause comes into play, and they're like, what is going on? And their coping mechanisms, where they're usually strong and they're usually carers and supporting everyone else, they just can't. They haven't physically got that in them anymore. So we need to be able to support, and I think that starts at home. with your partner or your friends, your circle, whoever it might be. And it usually takes, I've noticed, somebody else to say, do you think you maybe should go and get your bloods done, or do you think it could be this? And I see that a lot because, as I say, we don't really know what we're looking out for. And you can notice like mood changes. In fact, obviously we run a very, a very tight ship at work, and if we notice that someone's, going through any issues, women's health wise, we will, talk to them. And I've noticed lately one particular lady in the office, and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to sit her down next week and talk to her and say, look, I've noticed this and this. I think that which we would pay for from the company. I think we should get your bloods done. I think we should maybe look at some solutions. It might not be that, but let's just have a look because I've noticed this, and this, and I think sometimes, like you say, Jessie, you've opened up by talking to your community about it. You're making it sound like it's a normal. This should be normal conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys are having those. Unfortunately, that's not happening, all over. It's not. And especially in different communities, here, the menopause has very much been directed at the white middle classes. And one of the things that we try to do at Paul's Eye is, we offer diversity panels. We make sure everyone feels inclusive. And because every race actually has different symptoms as well. I don't know if you've noticed that when you've been doing all your research as well.
So Charlotte, you talk about how, I think it's interesting that you say sometimes what the catalyst to get the conversation going is somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Saying, hey, have you thought about this, or have you looked into this? Versus women maybe feeling like they can open up and say, I'm experiencing this, I need help with this, right?
Yeah.
And to that end, as Lawrence and I want to talk to husbands, and we want to help husbands understand what women are going through in a way in which is relatable to them, but also just gives them a baseline education of what's going on, right? Nobody needs to be an expert on the husband side. But then what I'm finding is husbands say, okay, you've helped me understand what's going on. You've given me some information about what could be happening with my wife, but now what do I do? Right? How do I start this conversation in a way that doesn't cross the line to mansplaining or doesn't feel intrusive? What have you found that you hear from women, or are there any examples where you've heard like this really helped? This was a way in which a husband could sort of start this conversation in a healthy way that was safe in the marriage.
Do you know what? I think that's it's a really interesting question, and I do think you do need to approach those subjects. It's just how you approach them. It's like I suppose we had years of it of a husband saying, or do you think it might be because you're due your period? And you're like, no, it's not because I'm due my period. And then the next day you get your period. Now, Come on, we all know what we're like, us women, and that is, the hormones thing. So sometimes I do think you're between a rock and a hard place when it comes to dealing with women and their hormones. But I would probably, I have, my partner was particularly good, with me. And I think, talking to me about how I was feeling. He knew I kept crying all the time, but he knew I wasn't depressed. So I think if you notice, maybe what we should do is have some signs that you look out for. Mm-hmm. And I think those signs are lack of sleep. Obviously, hot flushes is a big one, and crying, just not feeling like you want to go out and face the world. All of those sort of things. If you see that in your partner. These are things, and they're of that age. And I don't want perimenopause to have an age, because I meet so many younger women that have started going through perimenopause in their 30s. So I think we have to be very careful of saying, oh, well, you get to 46, 47, and that's when perimenopause starts. Generally, that is the rule of thumb, but not for all races and not for all women. So, I think it's knowing how to approach a subject, being there for them, saying, look, I do understand, I want to understand, but until they've got help, it's difficult. Because I would always suggest that you say, going to your doctor is a really good place to start, especially if you think someone, isn't handling things very well. like, why don't we make an appointment? I don't mind coming with you. And because it can feel really lonely. All of a sudden, you're living your best life. You know, you're hitting the head with a sledgehammer, and everything seems to have just gone. And you're like, a lot of people think that they've got really, you know, awful diseases like, you know, and dementia or whatever. They really don't understand what's going on, because what it boils down to is education. And we haven't had that education. Ask a lot of women what perimenopause is, and they wouldn't know. You know, they wouldn't know the symptoms of it, and they wouldn't know that. So you and us as a collective, what we're trying to do is spread the word, and educate. And I think that's what Paul's Live, our event in London, is all about. It's about having that education. And a lot of partners come along. We've got some influencers that are going to be there. And when I say influencers, they're male influencers. And they speak very openly about supporting their wives through it. One of them's wrote a book as well. And like, I think it's called the Man's Menopause Guide. And for me, that's great as well, because I think it's really important. Last year, a lot of women did bring their partners along, and at first you could see them in the audience like cringing, but by the end of it, I think that they were like, "Oh, great, she's getting some help. I'm getting some understanding," and I think we'll see that grow as a community and as an event moving forward. That more men will come along because they will want to know, and I'm interested to ask you. I know that this is your podcast, but I'm interested to ask you, what's your experience? You know, you're probably talking to more men than what I do. I always find them, when we go out and about, they're always really willing to talk to us, and they really want to help. But what's your sort of take on it?
I've had a few different experiences so far with men talking about this. One of which, to be quite honest, is negative. And
Okay.
it's heartbreaking, right? You hear men say terrible things like, "Well, just trade her in for somebody younger," or
Oh yeah.
"This isn't
Yeah.
my problem, this is her
Yeah.
problem," right?
Yeah.
Or "Why do I have to deal with this? She's the one," you know,
Yeah.
that type of thing. So sadly, that is one of those things, and I think that that's to be expected if we're trying to talk about something that's not comfortable and it's not normalized. You're going to have to face some of that. You're going to have to realize that some of that actually exists out there. And so I understand that. And to be quite honest with you, my mission really isn't to try to change those men.
No.
I believe that there are far more men out there that would care about this and would want to support their wives if they only understood it. And there's these nasty men out there who say those types of things. And I'm going to set them aside for a minute. And I'm going to focus on the guys that actually want to make a change and want to do something. And when those guys talk to me, what they mostly come from the standpoint of feeling completely helpless.
Yeah. And that's what I hear a lot. Yeah. That's what I hear a lot.
It's almost to the point of a sense of panic. Right.
Yeah.
I don't recognize my wife anymore. I don't know what to do. I'm scared for my relationship.
Yeah.
They probably don't even realize how high the divorce rates are during menopause.
Yeah, they are very high, aren't they?
They're sensing, right? They're sensing that their relationship is breaking down, and they're asking for help. And those are the men who I really want to lean into. Those are the men who I'm trying, I'll have one-on-one conversations with these guys. And really try to help them understand, I think, just a baseline of what's going on, have a little bit of education to be able to have an open conversation. And then the other aspect of what I feel like men are going through here is a little bit of the confusion of, well, this is hard for me too. Right. Yeah. And the men who understand that she's going through this and this is devastating to her, it's wreaking havoc on her body and her mind. But what they're struggling with at the same time is, well, I'm struggling as a man, right? Like I may not be going through menopause, but I'm struggling because my partner is, and I don't know what to do about it. I realize that I should be trying to help her, but who's going to help me? And that's also a little bit of what I'm hearing from men.
Yeah. Especially with when women a lot of women are the caregivers, okay? So they're the ones, and then when it breaks down, that's very difficult because, especially with your partner and your children, and it's not just relationships with your husbands or partners, it's relationships with your children as well. You know, for instance, a lot of women are going through perimenopause and they've got teenage daughters, you know, and as we know, that's a can be a challenging time, can't it? And then the husband's in between this, you know, this sea of hormone levels where I can imagine that it's you know, gone are the days where you went down to the pub as well. I mean, I feel like men do need an outlet, don't they, as well, and they need support groups. As we know, you know, if you look at men's health particularly, that a lot of men do find it difficult to speak. You know, suicide rates are up and things where they so trying to get them to speak about their own feelings is difficult, and then bring something they don't understand into it. Now that is a challenge in itself. So I think it is really important, like your podcasts like yourselves, and communities where, you know, I mean, we all go to parties now, and you can guarantee a lot of the men will come to me and say, Charlotte, can you help out? Son's she's definitely going through it now. And it's usually them that comes up to me and talks to me about it. And but as I say, they want to support, and I see it, and I'm like, I will obviously always talk about it if I have to, but generally I do like to have a rule. Please don't talk to me about menopause on a party evening. But yeah, and that you can see the desperation, and you're like, gosh. But as I say, I think there are lots of positives to come, and I think we can get there, because I think if we can have these normal conversations, you know, like it's really interesting the fact that you've got daughters. I just think when you're a dad of a daughter, you have to be able to have some awkward conversations. You have to be able to try and understand how a female mind works, probably more than you do if you have sons. So it probably makes you have a bit more empathy, I'm sure. And just like men with sisters do tend to have a lot more empathy with their partners. So, you know, the men that we're talking about that are quite chauvinistic, and they don't, you know, and they want to trade their wives in, let them, in the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the words of Mel Robbins, let them. But yeah, I think it's actually a really exciting, interesting time as well. And I've come out the other end, and I get to meet the most fabulous men and women who are doing great things within this. I don't want to call it market, but within this space, and they're living their best lives, you know, and they you basically go down to get up in life. I think quite a lot of times, you know, that's the pattern, and when you have come through the other end, you really, I think things change. I suppose it's a bit like the whole butterfly thing. So that if you can hang on in there, boys, it will get better. And your wife will never quite be the same. She'll be a different version of herself, but actually she'll be a true version of herself. And she probably won't give a damn about things that she used to give a damn about, because you realise what's really important: your family, you know, your friends, and you know, just generally how important life is. I mean, to have got, I always say, to have got to my age, you know, is a blessing. And I think we need to, not everybody looks at life like that, but I think we should. It's how we navigate menopause. And I think, you know, again, if you can be a supportive partner, great. If you're not getting that from your partner, there's so many groups out there now. And all I would say is you cannot be physically meeting people. I know social media is a great platform for some people, and I know it's very difficult sometimes to get out, your confidence goes and things, but people that come along to our events, they come up to me and they cuddle me and they say, gosh, I didn't know half of these solutions, okay, and I didn't know that other women were going through this. You know, they just literally like sponges, and they come out there, they feel loved, you know, they feel part of something, not judged, and they also feel that they are more equipped to be able to deal with the day-to-day stuff that's going to throw at them. Now, I'm a great believer in HRT. It works for me. And I know and I understand all the medical benefits of them. And I won't have people being scaremongered about taking HRT. And I have enough information and education for me to be able to say that with my hands in the air. it's not for everybody, for whatever choice that they make, and there are lots of ways, obviously, that you can go down the more holistic route. Again, so there's lots of things and if you've had cancer, we've got a menopause and cancer workshop now. Our menopause and cancer workshop is always completely full. In fact, we've had to move it to a bigger room this time, which is sad. But what happens is ladies they go through cancer. And then they go into early menopause, or they go into medical menopause. Now, you can imagine, at least I had my group of friends that were my age group, to say to me, well, look, I think, I've had what you've got, you're going to be okay, you're going to get this. If you're younger, you've already been through cancer, and most oncologists will say, well, you can't take any HRT. Now, you can take certain things, but you do need to, we've got all the best doctors in the country within these workshops that will be able to give the right information, and you shouldn't have to suffer completely. There are some wonderful supplements and things that can really help balance your hormones, which is what it's all about. But can you imagine, not only have you gone through all of those treatments, and I hear a lot of the time from ladies, actually the menopause was the worst bit of that whole journey, because I didn't know what was happening with my body. So again, we need education on that when that happens, what can we do? Now our charity we work with is menopause and cancer. So we are always promoting what they do, and that they're a massive support tool for all of our ladies that come along and are in that workshop. So so I'm quite proud of that, and I'm quite proud of the fact that we've now got the workshops which are for PMDD, PCOS, endometriosis, because a lot of mums were bringing their daughters along, their aunts were bringing nieces or whatever, and I thought, oh gosh, there's younger women and they really want to know about what happens to their bodies. And we don't want to scare them either. And I think there has been a bit of scaremongering in the press. It should be a conversation that's actually given when you go into, secondary school. What do you call it out there? What do you call high school? High school.
I tell you what the problem is with that, Charlotte, is especially from I think boys and girls need a base education, especially when they're younger. But as boys, at that age, we think about sex.
So, just generally what's going to happen to your body. I think for men and women, right, even if they don't listen, it's a word they've heard. When we've been out and about doing our filming in London, more men knew what a vulva was than women. Women thought a vulva was a vagina. They kept calling it a vagina. It's like, no, it's not a vagina. It's a vulva, okay? We were dressed as vulvas at the time, so so I think the education should start there. I think it's very important that we also teach our children to use the correct words. Saying something's a flower or it's a fairy is not good.
No, it doesn't help.
My granddaughter knows it's a vulva, and I think it's for me it's important. But I think that sort of education really helps. But I also think education within the workplace. Now, we lose a lot of really good, really good women, don't we? I remember, going into meetings, sweating, and what the advice I give now for that is I own my menopause. So if I go into a meeting and I'm having a bad day, or I've had a bag of sleep, and I've got I'm sweating, I will say, look, just if I forget what my trainer for, or if I do this, it's because I'm having a really menopausal day. And actually, when people say that, they say, right, do you know what? Since I've been owning it, I've actually not had the same symptoms. Where I was going into meetings and I was writing things on Post-its, I was like writing on my hand, don't forget to call so-and-so this. I haven't actually been doing that. So I think there's that whole thing, the way that the mind works during that time, is so interesting. I mean, the way that the brain changes. And for us to go about our work, we really do need men to understand, especially line managers, or that actually it's not that they're all of a sudden gone stupid. These women are, which is how you can be made to feel. But actually, I think in the workplace, it would be good for, especially larger companies where they have, a menopause person come in, do a chat, and tell everybody, what women in the office could be experiencing this. They could be having bad periods, and we need to be really aware of that,
Correct.
and we need to
Correct.
support them.
I
I think
think
that's
it's really
important, don't you?
important what you're saying there. So I'm going to rewind slightly because
Mm.
I think as men, we need to have a base knowledge, not because we want to try and fix our wives or our
Yeah,
partners. We need a base knowledge so that we can create a safe space that allows us to believe her so that she feels that we're interested in her, which
yeah,
I believe is really important. But, but,
yeah,
but Charlotte, what happens then is, and this is what Jesse and I often talk about, is we educate one man. That man may go back to
yeah,
his own business. He could be a team leader, he might be middle management, senior management, or even own the business or be on the board. But because he's got a good base knowledge of what is going on with his wife or partner, he starts to understand what is going on with the other
yeah,
women within his
yeah,
business. And I believe
yeah.
that's how we
Brilliant.
really get there. Because what I notice in the UK, and I know you're in the UK as well, but there's so many companies at the moment. We've got a menopause policy, and you go, okay, but what's your action plan?
Yeah,
No, we've got a menopause policy. Yes, and that's in the policy file, and that's in the
yeah,
policy cupboard. But what are you
yeah.
actually doing about it? And this is the piece
Very
that
little,
I feel
probably.
is so important.
Yeah, and again, we are seeing changes, though. I mean, obviously, the policy over here has changed recently in Parliament, which is good. You have to have um, you have to have a policy in place, but you also have to have an action plan now. So that's really interesting. So I think we will see big changes, and I think it will really benefit business. And that's the thing, because what's happening is we're losing that middle management. These women that have got all of that experience, we need to support them so they can, because it is only a few years where you do feel like that. It's a gap, and then I say it comes back. And also, a lot of women do want to change their careers. They have this epiphany that actually I want to be a yoga teacher. I don't want to work in corporate banking anymore. And I hear that all the time. There's more midlife entrepreneurs than any other group at the moment, and that just says it all. But is that because they're being pushed out? And don't get me started about the gender gap in business, because it won't go well. But that gap can also be created because women are leaving because they're not being supported, and we know that. So that we just need to make sure, like you say, that you've got people that care and are going to push those actions through. As I say, my company is very different, and I know lots of companies that will have that policy and those actions in place, where if they see someone suffering, it's like with the younger girls that have periods. I mean, I always know when anyone in my office is due a period, and I think, don't give them an extra project, and they're always amazed. I think it's my sixth sense. I know this information. Women do all sync as well, which is great. But
Correct.
I think, again, it's looking out for those signs, and it's just like you said. I think you don't need to know the ins and outs about it. You just need to be there to support, and I think if you can be there, and to say it's going to be all right. That's great. And also, there's sources of information out there for men and women. And as I say, I would approach it head on. If you're listening and you think, that's definitely my wife. She's not herself. I'm really worried about her. Take her out for dinner or cook her a nice meal, and sit down and say, are you okay? I'm really worried about you. You're not yourself. And just be really honest. Do you think it might be perimenopause? And she might have not even thought about it. That's the key, isn't it? She might have not thought about it, and then it's like you have a eureka moment when someone else mentions it. She might have friends that mentioned it, but all I'm saying is that I just think, really, that would be amazing if more men did that. My partner did it with me, and said, I really think that you should go to the GP. And it's very difficult to get your getting your bloods done as well. I don't know what it's like in the States, but um, they'll say, oh, you're not going through perimenopause, but you've got all the symptoms. But you know, the basic blood tests they do here will not show up the markers anyway
Mm-hmm.
properly. So I hate to say it, but again, I'd go for like a private test. The Medicheck ones are like, I think they're about £75 or something, but well worth spending because they'll get the markers to tell you what you're lacking. And my advice to anyone is when you go to the GP, we've got a symptom checker on our website, paulslive.com. Take that symptom checker, tick all the symptoms off that you've got, and then do your research so that you know what you want out of that appointment. Take someone with you if you can. If not, ask the doctor if you can record the conversation, because when you have brain fog and your memory lapses, and it's a lot to take in, they often usually the first thing is, no, you haven't got that, you're too young, you're too this, you're too that, and they haven't got that education themselves. I've even had it when I've heard that doctors have been Googling, right, why you're sitting there, which obviously is quite off-putting. So if you record the conversation, at least you can listen back to it, and always ask to see a specialist, but a women's health specialist, which most surgeries have. Don't take no for an answer. If you feel that you really want HRT and you've done your research, make sure that you've got that balance of hormones as well. I look at people's prescriptions sometimes, and I check with my colleagues who are doctors or professors, and say, so-and-so's on this, and I don't think, and you can guarantee that a lot of the time they're on the wrong dosage. Now that's not going to help either. You need that progestin with the estrogen balance, with the testosterone, a lot of the times, where what they're trying to do is just give you a patch and get on with it, because that, unfortunately, they haven't had the menopause education. That, in fact, they only have to do like half an hour of it, I think, within their and if it's not your subject, they have enough to deal with. And this isn't I'm not shaming doctors and their knowledge, because they have a wonderful knowledge, and but what I am saying is there's usually a specialist within that GP surgery that you could go to. So they would probably be my top tips, because I think when I knew what I wanted, I was not putting up with a no. Now, you shouldn't have to go private. You should be able to get what you need, especially in the UK. We're extremely lucky in the UK. We get HRT, one prescription a year, which I think is about £12.95 or something, and we'll get everything, which is amazing. Also, we're very ahead in the UK with things. So I do believe that when you look at us on a global, we are leading the way with the conversations that we're having, with the practitioners. I mean, our Menopause in Practice event for doctors and nurses, we get a lot of people come along, and a lot of medical professionals come along, because they want to know. Most doctors want to make their patients better. They want to help. That's what they did all their training for, and that's and so they will always try. But I think, know what you want, and if you don't get the right answer, go to somebody else within that surgery, because you need to get the help that you need sooner rather than later as well, I think.
So Charlotte, you've got Paul.
Yeah, you got my magazine.
Here you go, so everyone can see it. This is happening on the 4th of October. It's a one-day event. Tell us, why should women come to this? Why is it so important to be around other women? And I know you've touched on it, but if you could just express that again.
There's nothing more powerful than women in a room together. It's a lot of fun. So we've got the live stage, which is very much more like, if you think daytime TV with a really good vibe, like lots of fun. We've got celebrities talking about their stories and things, comedians, and the comedians, we've got 4 comedians, and they all cover different things from endo right through to postmenopause. So I think that's going to be great. And then we have an educational stage. Now, with the educational stage, we've got all the best doctors in the country talking symptoms head to toe. And what you will get is you'll get all of that education and all of those solutions. Now, I'm all about solutions because most people want to get their symptoms treated and get on with the rest of their lives. You know, they're not like us that want to, you know, want to bang the drum and make sure that we spread the word. And I think that's really important. And what you'll get is you'll get though, and you know, those solutions, those answers, and it's all headphones. So you know, if you're going to be intimate health, you know, migraines, dry eyes, whatever it might be, you can put your headphones in and sit down. And we've also got a disco going on. We've got a dance-a-thon for menopause and cancer. And we've got a fantastic radio station, Delete Radio, that are going to be they're going to be broadcasting from there. So everything we do, we have a lot of fun with. But we've got an experience hub now. The experience hub is always really popular. They're workshops, and they're anything from breath work to journaling, which I don't do. It's my ADHD. Oh, and we've got the ADHD workshop for, because my ADHD came out to play. Like, she wanted a party when I went through perimenopause, and it does, that changes the whole dynamic as well. You know, people will get late diagnosis within that time period. So, but with the Experience Hub, we've got all sorts of things to try. It's £5, you know, for a session. And again, you might think, oh, well, actually, I want to try yoga. I've never tried breath work. You know, and I think that's nice that you get to try new things. It's in central London, Covent Garden, so it's a lovely area. But you can come on your own. Lots of women come on their own. And we've got people that help show you around. You know, the atmosphere is electric. And I'm just really proud of what we do, you know, as a team to produce it. We're non-profit. It's a passion project, which is a bit silly to have a passion project. I'm sure it's fine if you've got, you know, millions in the bank, but, you know, it really is a passion to help as many women as possible and spread the word. And to meet people like yourselves as well that are, you know, that are really sort of pioneering the way forward. Jesse, are you going to be able to come over?
I would love it. I think it would be great. I mean, it's been really interesting as I've learned more and more about what's going on in menopause to know that these types of summits exist, and that these, I mean, it's just great to know that this is happening. And I think, you know, clearly one of the things that I've seen in just a short amount of time talking about this is that, you know, women are desperate for education, right? They're desperate to understand what's going on. And men are as well, obviously. The only difference is that men don't know that they need to know this, right? I think women are aware that something's going on and they want to understand it. Men are still mostly don't even realize it's happening, and that's, I think, so we're behind the curve from an education standpoint, because we need the education, but we don't even know we need it yet, because most women are. Which is incredible when you think about how difficult these symptoms are. But most women are actually suffering in silence.
And we see that a lot, and we don't want people to hide behind that. And I think, again, the menopause market's been monetized, and there's so much rubbish out there. Again, they're taking advantage, and that's what I see all the time. And we've got like 70 exhibitors. We're completely sold out of exhibitors. But every single one of those, we do a check on. We won't have anything that's not evidence-based. We won't have like the latest, you know, woo-woo things, because again, we don't want women to waste their money. I mean, I was desperate when I was losing my hair. I was buying everything, and somebody pointed out that one of the things I was using had the same ingredients as a washing liquid, you know, a washing up liquid. And it's just like, so again, ladies, don't be fooled by all of these products that are coming out that have, you know, supposedly got accreditation. Really do your research, and that's why pause is good, because you know that you whatever you see there, we've done the vetting for you, and we turn supplement companies away left, right, and centre. Because again, all they've done is put a menopause on it, and they thought, all right, well, that's it. We're gonna, and then you actually look at the ingredients, and you're like, well, what? It's just like a multivitamin, but it's not going to make any difference to my life. But you're charging £25 for it. So I think that we have to be really clear on that as well. And I've seen it, and I don't like it. So our tickets are only £17.99, and the reason we priced them at that amount was we wanted everybody to be able to afford them. This isn't a middle class menopause. It's for everyone out there, and I think that's really important. So I think whoever comes along, they will feel part of something. And as I say, there's something for everyone. That we've got a fantastic panel that I think Lawrence is going to be on, aren't you, Lawrence?
I am, Charlotte. I am.
Yeah, which is going to be great. Which I think you'll really enjoy. Joe Seeley, that's on it. He's married to one of the Cheshire housewives,
Okay.
which I'm sure you've got the housewives over there, Jessie. And he's been really vocal about her journey. He's very funny. He used to be a footballer, and I've met him before. He's spoken before at our events, but I actually quite like the way that he has the humour about it to get to other men. And I think that, again, we have to have humour ourselves as well, which is, sometimes I laugh at some of the things I do. I heard a great one yesterday. One of our community thought she'd taken her mobile phone out with her and went to get it out, and it was a remote control. And I've put my keys in the freezer, and I spent 2 hours looking for them. These are things, but you can laugh at them, and you have to laugh through it. Laugh through midlife, because believe you me, I think coming out the other side is pretty good.
Yeah, quite right, Charlotte. Jessie, have you got any more questions? I'm aware that we've gone through our time allotment, and Charlotte still wants to have a Sunday and another couple of glasses of wine. So,
absolutely.
Okay. Well, actually, Man U are playing Man City, and my partner's a Man U fan, and I don't think they're doing very well. So actually, I'm safer in here than I am in there.
Oh, this has been great, Charlotte. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
And, really appreciate it, and all the success in your event in October.
We should do an Instagram live next week or something. That'd be really nice to do, because I really would like to encourage more men to come along.